10 workers at a Walmart supplier warehouse in Southern California were, including, I'd just like to add, that one of these workers, one of these 10 workers, was a single mother of 4 children who's been working there for 5 years. They were put on indefinite suspension last Friday for taking a 5-minute break from the heat of the sun.
Okay, indefinite suspension pretty much means you're fired.
Right, absolutely, pretty much. Yeah, you're not getting paid, and most likely they're not going to be welcomed back. Olivet International Warehouse in Mira Loma, California, is believed to be getting back at these workers for the workers raising concerns and making complaints about wages and working conditions over the last few months, including a 2-day strike that they put up at the end of July. The workers picketed the suspension in front of the warehouse last Wednesday. Richard Hernandez was one of the leading picketers and one of the workers, and he said, "I just want management to hear us and take a walk in our shoes to see what we go through every day." He has raised concerns to management over the last few months about things such as lack of access to water, overloaded forklifts, and others have filed complaints about blocked fire exits and safety hazards like falling towers of boxes.
Now, hold on. Pay attention to the name Hernandez, okay, working in some of these warehouses. Now, warehouse work is really difficult work, and it's often low-paying work as well. So you get a lot of people, a lot of desperate poor people, which happen to be more often minorities. Keep it real, right? You get a lot of minorities and poor people to work in these factories, and you know this is a good example of exploitation, exploitive work.
Absolutely. And the other worker that I mentioned was a single mother of 4 kids who's been working there for 5 years. And, you know, what power does she have as well? You know, they take advantage of minorities and poor people, you know, people like single mothers that aren't really in a position to do anything. But when they try to do something and they try to make a change for the better and ask for better wages or better working conditions, they get retaliation for that. And
Right.
the company gets angry, and this is what the protesters believe is happening right now. They took a break for 5 minutes from the 90+ degree day that they were working in, loading heavy boxes on and off trucks and labeling them and stacking them, and they were put on indefinite suspension. I mean, that is absolutely inhumane.
Now this sounds a lot like an article that I had read probably a couple of weeks ago, where a journalist, a reporter, had went undercover at one of these warehouses, and you know she endured very strict time schedule. You know, as in very short breaks. You had to very short amount of time. I remember that she had this scanner, and it would tell you how many steps it takes to get to your item that you're supposed to scan to have it sent out, and it also has a timer on there, and it tells you how long it should take. But what if the item's not there? And she's run into that before. And of course you have to hit certain time marks, right? You have to get to that item and scan it and load it in a certain amount of time, and if you don't meet that, you get fired. So you're constantly busting your hump back and forth. You know, she complained of, at the article, she complained of back pain, her leg pain. One place that she actually had to go and get these items from continuously shocked her every time she touched it.
You see, that's absolutely inhumane. Especially in this country, I think that, you know, a person that grows up with ideals about the way that things should be and ideas about the way that America is said to be, you wouldn't expect that from, you know, a first world country, that workers would treat, that employers would treat their workers like that. It's absolutely inhumane. Your
And all of
workers
this,
need breaks. They don't need to be put on strict time schedules like that. They don't need to be haunted uh, for their every step that they take. It's not a way to build morale. It's not a way to build productivity. It's not a way to build a loyal employee following. And it's disgusting. I mean, how can you
now
be a
all of this,
person and treat other people this way? Can you imagine treating other people the way that these corporations treat their workers?
well, it's because they're a very easily replaceable workforce at this point, a desperate, irreplaceable workforce. And all of this, remember, is for minimum wage to probably $9 an hour. And this company that this journalist I'm sorry, this warehouse that this journalist had been in, there was such a high turnover rate. And they told you on the, and they told her on the first day, don't take anything personally, because they've seen people break down, cry, like have emotional breakdowns and leave because the work is so incredibly difficult.
Of
And there are
course,
people
because
who have been there for years taking care of families and
they can't afford to
barely
leave.
taking care of their families. It's
But
just a
yeah,
terrible
but
work environment.
absolutely, it is wrong and unhealthy. It is mentally unhealthy for a human being to be under that kind of constant stress and those constant stressful working conditions. This warehouse wasn't much better. They didn't have that level of technology keeping track of their workers, but they did use technology to stress out, to intimidate their workers. The warehouse installed cameras in the break rooms and next to the bathrooms to monitor all breaks and all bathroom breaks, and to monitor how many times and how long each employee went to the bathroom.
Oh,
They
of course,
also
because you know what they can do. They when you get a break time, I mean that counts against you. And sometimes it's
yes.
a very long walk through some of these really giant warehouses. And
Mm-hmm.
even as soon as the buzzer rings or the break bell rings, whatever they have, or as soon as it shows it's break time, you're on the clock, even if you're still at your job site. And sometimes it's a 2-3 minute walk all the way to the break room, then the bathroom. Then if you want to make any calls, you got to go outside to your car. In this particular warehouse that journalist had visited, there was a huge problem of theft. So she had to keep her cell phone in her car, and because if it's in the lockers in the break room, it's going to get stolen. And of course, you
Right.
can't have it on you when you're on the floor. So I mean, it's just a terrible working conditions.
Right. And like I said before, Hernandez said that there were issues with access to water, and the forklifts were being overloaded, which is a safety issue, and boxes were being stacked so high that they were coming down and falling on people. But every time he went to management with these kinds of complaints, he was literally laughed out of the room and treated like he was making a joke. And the warehouse also hired professional consultants to come in and convince employees why they shouldn't go to management and talk to each other about working conditions. The warehouse management has also told workers that Walmart, who makes up 70% of the warehouse's business, will cut off business if workers continue to protest, resulting in everyone losing their jobs. So they're using threats and intimidation to try to get employees to shut their mouths. The warehouse union, Warehouse Workers United, has filed a complaint in May, and inspections and investigations are still pending, but they aren't expected to be completed until sometime this November.
And do you remember the story that we had talked about? I believe it was the Texas explosion, when we started talking about how OSHA is laughably understaffed
Yes.
and how they could only inspect a facility if they were to inspect every facility in the United States, it would take 133 years. A lot of this stuff wouldn't happen if we had some, oversight from the regulatory agencies. And I know businesses would like to scream like, oh my God, too much regulation, it's overbearing regulation, it's crushing us. No, it's not, because when your regulators can only come by every 133 years, that's not exactly crushing regulation.
Right, exactly. You know, things like the EPA and the FDA, when they're underfunded and thus do an inferior job, it's always, you know, Republicans that are saying, well, they're not doing their job, so let's just shut them down completely and not have them at all. Because that's their design, basically, to defund them to the point of incompetence and then use that incompetence as an excuse to defund them further and propose the elimination of that particular program.
I know some conservatives out there will be like, well, yeah, but you don't understand. It's killing jobs. Well, they like to go to that killing jobs argument for pretty much every regulation, and
Absolutely.
there is such a thing as overregulation. But right now, I really don't think the United States is suffering from that unless you're comparing yourself to China.
Right, absolutely. And what about the jobs that could be made of regulators and inspectors that, you know,
But
actually,
government doesn't create jobs, Ree.
of course not.
We all know that.